Teransane, before we start today's program, as usual, let us take a moment to pay our homage to the Lord Buddha and take refuge in the Noble Triple Gem and observe the 5 precepts. First, let us start by chanting the Namaskara 3 times to pay our homage to the Perfect One, our Lord Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Today you are going to experience something very special, because we're going to have a video also. But that will happen at the end. See, when I say things like that, and that's what you hear most of the day, not most of the day, but you are used to hearing that, isn't it? From the world around you. You just have to turn on the TV or the radio, or you just have to go out and look around you, and everyone has always something to offer, something very special. And it raises our attention. And that's what our mind always really likes, to find something special, right? Yesterday I was in our monastery in the evening, and the sermon was going on. So in Saturday afternoon, our main teacher, Guru Hamdu, talks to the community and all the devotees, and it's a long sermon. We call it the Mahadeshanava, so it's usually from 2:30 to 7, so it's 4.5 hours. And in our monastery we have many kids as well. So these kids, even 1 hour of listening to a sermon, profound sermon from Guru Hamdu is something you have to really respect. Any child, 10-year-old child, sometimes they are listening for 4.5 hours without moving around. That's really, really remarkable. Anyways, on the other hand, we can understand if they are not interested, as well as if they feel the urge to move around. That's what kids are used to do, right? So I saw these kids running around near the kuti where I was standing. There were some kids playing around. So they were not really interested in listening to the sermon, or they have already listened to most of it, so it was near the end of the sermon. And then suddenly there was a video playing. So the music was coming. Suddenly, as uninterested as they were in not listening to the sermon, they dropped everything and they ran as soon as they could, quickly, to the next best. So in our Sanghavasa we have many subdivisions, like every age group has its own house or kuti with its own monk and taking care of them. So there's many places where the sermon is being streamed. So the sermon happens in the Dhamma hall and all the devotees are down there, but we have the Sanghavasa where no devotees are allowed, and we are there, the monks, and only the kids. So in there, where we are, there's many places where the sermon is being streamed. So then the kids are running to find the next best place where it's being streamed, just to see the video. So we can see, as an example, how our mind always looking for special things. And special can be two kinds of specialness. In Sinhala we call it as Visheshai means special. But then there's another layer of specialness which we call Suvisheshai and Duvisheshai. At least that's what Guru Hamdu calls it. And from how I understand it, it's what special means we will learn. It'll take some more time to understand what special means, I think. But Duvisheshai and Suvisheshai is quite straightforward to understand. See, in our lives we are always looking for Suvisheshai, right? So it means special and good, special and nice, special and tasty, special and brings me happiness. We don't like to see or experience Duvisheshai, which means special and not good. Like a war. A war is special, but not good, right? Getting sick, getting cancer is most certainly special. So you would tell this to others, right? Imagine someone in your family has a cancer, just imagine. So there can be either one of the two things. Either you feel it is something you want to say to others because they should know it, or you feel the opposite. You don't want to tell others, then why do we not want to tell it others? We don't have a problem to talk about the pen. And whatever happens to this pen, we do. But if someone in our family has a cancer, we don't tell this to the next person on the street. Because we feel it's special, isn't it? As well as the opposite. So when there's when we win the lottery, that's special. Our mind is always receptive to find special things. So we understand that. And it has a strong vexation for this specialness. It really wants, actually, we will understand the soul, we should say, mission of the ignorant mind, the mind which is not realized the Dhamma, which means not an Arahant's mind, right? An Arahant's mind or a Buddha's mind is not an ignorant mind, but for the rest of us, where there is ignorance, there's always a quest to find specialness, uniqueness, and beyond uniqueness, unique and good. So the most important thing is unique, then after should also be good. But if it's not good, at least it's unique, right? So, coming back to what I said at the beginning, now I told you, there's going to be a video. So the thing is, how does this work in our mind? So today I want to give you, I'll try, a concise wrap-up of the main points we need to know, how we can contemplate the Dhamma practically. So the meditation we're going to do today will be based on that explanation as well. And there are many depths of understanding the mind as well, right? So the Buddha always talked about Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana, and what they are and what they are not, and what their characteristics are, what their characteristics are not. You might have heard these terms. And of course, we should say that as much as, this is just a side note, as much as we see scriptures where these terms are mentioned, and when people listen to these things, they got enlightened, we should say that it's not about understanding, it's not about Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana at all. The enlightenment or the Dhamma is not about that. It's about Anicca at the end of the day. Anicca, you can see, I can explain you the wind, and you can become enlightened when you understand the wind, when you understand this cup. So sometimes people, they didn't listen to Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana, but they were enlightened. Like, how about Upatisankolita? They heard simply Ye Dhamma Hetu Pabbhava Tathagato Aha Te Sanchayo Nirodho. That part I can't remember. Okay. Anyways, I'll look it up. But you know that stanza, right? So basically what it says is cause and effect. When causes come together, the effect manifests, and when the causes, we should say, no longer come together, the effect ceases to manifest. As simple as that sounds, trust me, it's not as simple as it sounds. But we gradually come to realize. It's a process of realizing. That's how it happened for me, and that's how it will happen for you as well. And so, coming back to the point, we will talk about the mind today. I'll try to explain you the mind, the two processes which happen in our mind, on a bit of a beginner's level. I would say this was the first time when I understood this part, I was able to meditate. When we call meditation as what the Buddha has called as meditation. Meditate on anicca using certain kind of understanding to understand what's going on in the mind. Because since we don't understand this reality of anicca, dukkha, anatta, which we call as ignorance, we can't meditate. So first we need the samadhi, which means the right view about what this means, which we can apply this in many kinds of examples, and I'll focus on a simple example, the way I started to understand these things, and then later on we will be able to learn many more ways of understanding the same thing, which is anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So we don't need to actually understand rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara, vijnana in too much detail, because these were concepts which even before the Buddha's time they were there. These 5 aggregates were known. If you have no idea what these 5 aggregates are, then let me just tell you, it is simply the 5 functions of the mind. Yeah? 5 functions of the mind called rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara, vijnana. So when we are talking about your and my life, in the reality, all that your life really is these 5. Why? Well, because how do you know about the world? How do you know that you are sitting in this sermon hall right now? It's because of seeing something, right? Hearing something, smelling something, tasting something, and thinking something. So beyond these, you have never experienced anything, isn't it? How do you know that you're a man or a woman? It's because of sight and thought, sight and sound, right? Yesterday, I listened to a monk, just briefly. I heard some monk explaining Dhamma next to me. He was explaining a really brilliant Dhamma point, which is a bit deep, but I'll give it to you anyways, because it's food for thought. We'll go into this direction of the Dhamma later on as well. See, he asked this question to the audience: where are you right now? So what will you say? I'm in Colombo. I'm in this Royal Institute. I'm on the 4th floor of this building. That's where I am, right? That means if you are here, if I go to you, to your head, and I start to touch your head, like means I just how to say? I just touch your head. Does it change your position? No, you're still being here. Then whether I'm doing it on the surface of your head or within your head, should there be any difference? If I can do things in your head or on top of your head, there shouldn't be a difference. You are here in Colombo. But now let me say, I'll just change 2 nerves inside your brain. Still you are here, right? I mean, I'm just changing the nerves, but where are the nerves? They are most certainly in Colombo, in this school. See, what if I change 2 nerves in your brain? I can make you see things you're not seeing right now. See? Because how do we see? Now we are coming to the point. Are we seeing what's outside of us? See, where does seeing happen? No, modern science knows this very well. Seeing happens somewhere in your brain or beyond your brain. We don't know. Is it in the mind, or is the brain the mind, or is the mind something else? These questions are not important to me, certainly not now, but definitely we know if I cut down the nerve between your eye and your brain, are you going to see anything? You're not. So then, can seeing happen in your eye? Well, then you don't need your nerves, right? If seeing happens in your eye, you don't need nerves. You don't even need a brain. But do you need a brain to see? Good. So that means seeing must happen after the brain does some computation, at least. The brain or the mind. See, so when I refer to mind, actually the only thing I'm referring to is the fact that seeing happening right now. Can you prove that? Can you prove that seeing is happening right now? Well, can you see this? So you have a proof. So there's no doubt about that. Mind must happen. Right? So if you close your eyes, will seeing happen? Will you see this pen? No. So which means that is the mind. Seeing is the mind. Hearing, you hear me? So hearing is the mind. So hearing happens, definitely. Thinking, so these experiences we all have. So that's what we refer to as the mind. Where does it happen? It doesn't matter. But we know brain and nerves and receptive organs, they are essential for it. So without eyes, can you see? Normally we can't. Why? Because if the eye is not stimulated, what will happen? Because the eye, what does the eye do? We don't need to go too much into science. I don't know how much you know about these things, but it's not important. I'm just saying, never come to the idea that Dhamma is about knowing a lot of facts, but it's helping to contemplate. See, this light which comes to the eye is optical energy, or we can say electromagnetic energy, whatever you call it. And then let's say, this is a light energy. Then it gets translated into an electric impulse. That's what the eye really does, right? The eye is merely a transformer of energy, light energy to electric energy. Nerve impulse is an electric potential. It's like a current, like in your walls, like what's feeding the TV. Just a current. But of course, if you don't have an eye, see the nerve can't collect light energy. The nerve is not responsive to light energy. The nerve can only carry an electrical signal, not light, isn't it? So that's why we need the eye. If without the eye, this translation would not happen from light energy to electric energy. So that's why we need an eye. But if I were to go and stimulate your nerve directly, for example, that's what people do these days with this thing called virtual reality. What are they doing when they're using this virtual reality, when they're developing this kind of, I don't know, kinetic, this thing you put on top of your head and then it's stimulating some part of your brain? I mean, that's what they're going towards. The science is going in this part. Basically, they're taking a pathway where they don't need to use your eye. So you don't need your eye to see, isn't it? As long as I stimulate the nerve behind your eye, that's enough. See, because all the eye really does is it creates a voltage and sends that voltage down the nerve. So what if I come and I create voltage to the nerve directly? Maybe I'll take some generator, some electrical generator, and I connect that to your nerve directly. That's coming from your eye. See, it won't make a difference. You will see the same things. Provided I provide the same current, nothing will change. Do you agree with me? Good. So let's say I do that. So what if you're going to New York and you're seeing the Statue of Liberty? What's going to happen? that statue, some light will reflect from that statue, the light will come into your eyes, and instead of, let's say right now, you're saying you're in Colombo, that means right now, when you're seeing the Swaminahanse, let's say the voltage traveling down this nerve in your eye might be 0.4 volt. Okay? When you're going to the Statue of Liberty, what's going to happen is the light that's going to come into your eye, and then your eye will perform this duty of translating light into voltage, will translate it into 0.3 volt. Now, see, what I can do is, I can come to you right now and I can take your nerve and provide it with 0.3 volt, okay? So then what's going to happen? You're going to see the Statue of Liberty. You're going to see the Statue of Liberty, isn't it? So that means, what I can do is, I can come to you, take your nerve and feed it with all sorts of input, and then I can make you experience whatever you want. And you can't make any significant difference from the experience you're having right now to the experience you're going to have then. How do you know what is real and what is not real? How do you say this is real? How do you say this is more real than the other thing? So, see, maybe today in the morning when you were asleep, somebody came and took your nerve, but you're asleep, so you didn't know, and he just started to take your nerve and connect it with some sort of a device, and now he's playing a software. Will you ever know? You can't. So that means, how do you know you're in Sri Lanka? How do you know you're a man? How do you know you are in this room? You can't know. Because seeing happens with all these inputs. That's why virtual reality works, isn't it? That's why now, because even that point you can understand, I understood this yesterday. In our world, we are all looking for happiness, and our mind is so vexed, so desperate in looking for the things it likes to experience, the things which it believes intrinsically, and the thing in which it believes that these things have intrinsic happiness. So what are these things? Well, everyone has a list of things it likes. So, see, it can be traveling, it can be playing games, right? So when I played games in my teenagehood, fantasy worlds with elves and dwarfs and tall, and you can shoot an arrow, and these are things which I believed they were intrinsically suvisheshai. So they were things which, when I experience them, they give me so much happiness. So that's why I wanted to be in this world all the time. So the thing is this now, today, how do they try to satisfy their mind, people in today's day and age? See, today, it's not good enough to eat one kind of rice, one kind of dal or something. Especially you want to experience variety. So variety means different kinds of food. So when I went into the supermarket in Germany, maybe 20 years ago, there was, we have this thing called mustard. I think it's also here in Sri Lanka, we also have some mustard. So in Germany, we have one kind of mustard that was traditionally manufactured over the centuries. Right? So then sometimes French people came, maybe with Napoleon, then suddenly we had Dijon mustard. Okay, we had two. Dijon was the high-class one, and then the normal mustard that was produced in our city. But today, now we had many immigrants, Polish people came as well, and then Polish people said maybe, see, we are in Germany, but there's one kind, but everything is nice about Germany, but the problem is, Polish mustard, there's nothing like that. You have to, we can't eat German mustard, that's not okay. We need our Polish one. So then they started to import Polish ones. And of course Germans were bored with the German one as well, so sometimes they like to try something else. And therefore they also like to buy the Polish one. But so if you go to the supermarket today, you find 6 types of mustard. So think about all the energy that goes into transporting all these things. You have to take a lorry from Poland to Germany and bring it. And people today want to travel around the whole world. That's what I did. How do you do that? You need to consume a lot of energy, right? You have to take an airplane. An airplane is not really the most fun thing for the climate. The planet will not say yes, thank you for traveling. You're doing so much good to the earth. Yeah. So for the sake of satisfying their mind, what are people doing today? What are we all doing today? Flying around the world constantly. That's what people do, at least many friends. I mean, if in my age group a person in Germany has not been to at least one exotic country like Sri Lanka or Thailand or at least Vietnam, then you are a failure in society. Because that's what counts on the competition, on the market of things you should have to be valuable for others, or to be, we learned the word, we use the word, suvishesha. Right? So, but now of course, if that's not enough, because the world has limits. Airplanes have limits. You can't fly, you have to use lots of resources. So if that's not enough to satisfy the mind, because if it would be enough, we wouldn't have to think about any more solutions, but since it seems not to be enough, even that much, what's the next step? Now we need to be really, really smart, and let us use virtual reality, because virtual reality can give you more of the things you want even quicker. Because now, see, if you want to go to Australia, going there costs a lot of money. You need to bring a lot of causes together, airplane, insurance, as well as you need to have the physical abilities. Your body needs to be certainly in certain way. But if these things are not possible, or if you want to have more of that than what you can have, virtual reality make it possible for you. So in there, we can create the world you like. Because you all have a world you like in your mind, which we call as Pancha Upadana Skandha. Pancha Upadana Skandha, I mean, this is a good first way to understand Pancha Upadana Skandha is the world that you have in your mind. I mean, this is the world you like to be in, but you can never be. See, your favorite place to make a holiday is in there. The way people should behave is in there. And the person you wanted to marry, he or she was already in there before you met the one you actually married. Right? So all we really do from this moment onwards is we're trying to find in the real world what we have already created in the Pancha Upadana Khandha ourselves. Isn't it? So we get constantly drushtified, that's what we call in our monastery. Drushtifying means, drushti means a view. You get some kind of opinions that what is vishesha, what is especially suvishesha. Therefore you go out and build your model of life around that. So we live in society, we associate people, we see things, and then models build up. And then we experience things, therefore this updates our models as well, and then we go out and try to match the reality with the model. And every moment what happens is comparison happens in our mind between reality and model. So this is what we are addicted to do. Now, I want to explain you this process a bit more in clearer. So now we understood Now we understood, so we want to understand, I want to explain you these two processes. So we understand there's everything in this world, everything on which our experience of this world and what we think about ourselves is based on mind or experience. I proved this to you with this example of the Statue of Liberty, right? So beyond seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting and touching, you don't know anything. It's from this that anything else is actually created. Which means these are actually the things you are, right? These are the only real things you have, or I have. Or better to say even, you don't have them, these are just things that happen, that you are, or something like that. So, that's why it's worthwhile studying them and understanding them clearly. Now, we already talked a little bit about the fact how this mind happens. See, there are many layers of detail which I want to go into, but certainly something that made sense to me from the first moment when somebody told me is that mind must be a process. Now, what does that mean? Mind is like a computation or something like that. Yeah. And when we study how seeing happens, we can definitely understand this point. So somehow causes need to come together. We don't need to know exactly the details, what kind of causes are there, and where exactly does it happen. So that's not important, but we have to understand that it's something that happens as a response of causes coming together. So maybe it's in the brain somewhere, right? So the Buddha explained it in a very simple way. He didn't go into too much detail like we go today when we are in our modern world. So how did the Buddha explain the seeing process of this? So now I'm talking with you. I want to explain you the two processes in our mind and how to contemplate on this in our life with some examples. Okay, so the first process is what we call as the Vijnana process. Vijnana, I would simply call it, translated as minding process. Minding means awareness, means that is what actually we really are, and that's also the process which performs the function that the mind should perform. So this is what the mind can really do. That's what this process is. And that's what the Buddha called Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana. He went into explaining the nature of these, which is what we need to understand. So, I'll try to write it down. So the minding process is the process of the mind which we already have, that the Buddha also had and another hand also has. Because they can also see, hear, smell, taste and touch. And these processes are actually inherently peaceful. These are inherently, it's like smoothly running. So this process alone is not the problem at all. Because, see, the Buddha had these six, but he didn't suffer. Which suffering means he never experienced any vexation, stress, disappointments, desires. So desire is not inbuilt into our mind. Desire is something that happens on top of it. Because these six processes, seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching and thinking, they don't have expectations, they don't have wantings. So Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana doesn't have any of these things. But we experience these things. So that means there must be more than this. That's why we always say happiness is not something that you need to achieve. It's not something we can achieve. Happiness is simply not trying to achieve happiness. So there not being any desire, what is a desire? It's an attempt to achieve happiness. It's the wanting to achieve happiness, or it's the search for happiness. Right? So the search for happiness we call desire. But happiness is not a searching, right? Searching is, so when you're searching for something, it means you don't have what you're searching for. But the moment you have what you're searching for, you are not searching. You should not be searching. So if somebody says, I'm searching for my keys, we can always clearly conclude he doesn't have them. Right? So for someone who's happy, does he have to look for happiness? No. Right? Therefore, this is a process which doesn't search for happiness, and because it's naturally peaceful, naturally, there's no need to fill anything. There's no void that we have to fill. The mind doesn't come with a void. The void is created artificially. Right? So the void you and me feel in our lives, why we feel like we have to do so many things, is not inbuilt into the mind. It's created due to the second process. That's why happiness is not something we need to achieve. So these 6 things, so the Buddha explained how these things happen. A simple way to understand it is Chakuncha Paticca Rupecha Upajjati Chaku Vijnana. Something like that. Right? So I don't know too much Pali, but these are the few things I know, where he simply explains Chaku means the eye, Paticca means come together, Rupa means, in this case we can just say sight. So we will be going more into detail later on as well, but we can say when sight and eye comes together, so Upajjati means then when these things come together, arises Chaku Vijnana, which means, for all intents and purposes, I will simply say seeing. So seeing is the effect of at least 2 causes coming together. It doesn't matter where it is. So scientists might say somewhere in the brain, the signal of the nerve signal comes to some sort of part of the brain, and when that happens, seeing happens. So that might be true. Then some others might say there's something more than this body, and in there it happens. Yeah, might also be true. But definitely we can agree 2 things must come together, and then it's like this. It's like this, right? So seeing is this sound. So it's like stimulus and the mind or the minding environment come together, sound appears, sound manifests. So seeing is like that. I always naturally felt, because the more we understand the Dhamma, you will understand everything in this world is like that, not just the mind. When we are talking about arising and passing away, everything in this world has that nature, but you have to clearly understand what does it mean arising and passing away, because there are so many ways to go wrong in understanding what arising and passing away means. So I am taking you on the journey I took. But we simply need to understand, well, however, it comes as a contact of 2 things coming together, right? Like if I put this pen and do like this, right? So seeing is like that, hearing is like that. So that's why we always write down this, so it comes in quantum, what's the plural of quanta? Quanta. Quanta means it's quantized. The mind is quantized, which means there are bits. It comes in portions. we'll talk about this point now as well. But let me just write down what I explained to you about Chakutincha Paticca Rupecha, the thing that when light and I comes together, or when sight and mind comes together. Now there are a few things to say, just to clarify, because these were things I always was bothered by these things myself. Some people say, how can, when sight and eye comes together, seeing happens, so that means seeing happens in the eye? No. So this is very simplified, yeah? Because in the Buddha's time they didn't have, maybe, or he might have known, he must have known all these things, but people didn't go after the knowledge as much as we do in today's time, and why that is we will also understand more and more. But since we have a lot of knowledge now, see, when I started learning the Dhamma, I had this question, because there were people who were very well versed in the Dhamma, and they said, see, the seeing happens when light comes into the eye here, on this point, it happens here. Then I said, impossible, makes no sense to me whatsoever, because simply, the fact is, if I remove the nerve, it won't happen anymore, so how can it happen here? So of course, that is not the way we should understand this, right? That's why I told you, light comes into the eye, from there it's translated into an electrical energy, then a nerve impulse travels to somewhere in the brain, which we call the visual cortex, and then that electrical signal gets, we should say, computed, and maybe after or in that process seeing happens somewhere. So it's definitely the coming together of two things, some sort of a signal, but it must be a signal the mind can understand, isn't it? Because mind can't understand light. You can't feed light to your mind. You can't feed this light energy. Similarly as you can't feed this light energy to your nerve. It doesn't know what to do with that. The eye has to be there to translate light energy to electrical energy. Similarly, this electrical energy has to be, electrical energy is also not something that the mind can understand. Electrical energy has to be translated to an energy the mind can understand. And this is what we call brain. So brain is merely the translator from electrical energy to an energy the mind can understand. We could call it as mental energy, consciousness energy, or whatever the things. But these are, so this is only a first approximation. Later we'll go into more detail about what these things are as well, but let's keep it for that. Okay, so therefore, now we need to understand this point that the mind comes in packets or in units. How do we understand that point? So that means seeing and hearing and smelling and so on happens in fragments. For example, see, when I say A, B, see, you can hear both, right? So you can hear both because in one moment this hearing of A happened, and when that passes away, now the hearing of B happens, right? I mean, otherwise you should never you should always hear the same thing forever. Do you feel like that? No, you can hear differences. See, you hear sound now, and then you hear another sound, and another sound, and another sound. So which means there's always elementary units of sound created. So with the words I'm speaking right now, a sound is created. With the words I'm speaking right now, another sound is created. So, but for that to happen, the previous sound already passed away, right? So where's the sound that you heard yesterday? Where's the sound you heard yesterday? It's gone. All you can experience in this moment is a memory of it, isn't it? The memory of that happens. But this memory is also something like this. In this moment, this happens, right? So if I ask you to think about the sound yesterday, you can't actually experience that sound from yesterday. Think about the cake. Think about something you did yesterday. Maybe a movie or something you saw yesterday. See, when you think about it right now, can you see it in the exactly with the same details as you saw it yesterday? No, you don't see it with the exact same details, because what you're experiencing right now is a rudimentary, less detailed, let's say, recreation of it, which we call memory. So memories are typically not as high detailed as the things we see. So therefore, we can see whatever we experience is always a vibration of these 6 kinds happening in this moment. Okay? And there's it's a quick process of arising and passing away of these things. Right? So in 1 second, many seeings and hearings happen. See, how is it that you can see my hand moving like this? See, it's happened in a lot of bits. So in one moment you see only. So can we see a movement in itself? You can't see a movement. Have you ever seen? It's like when you're watching the TV. Can you see something moving on the TV? Is there something actually moving on the TV? How does the TV work? When they say 35 frames per second. So are they moving anything? No, they're just showing you a picture, taking that picture away, putting another picture. But the picture is not moving, right? The picture is just a standing picture. So they're just showing you many standing pictures, nothing more. But the connection of these pictures and what they mean and the movement is our interpretation. Right? This is what our mind creates from this. Likewise, the fact that you can see my hand moving means in all these steps here, seeing happened. A new instance of seeing happened. If, for example, seeing happened only here and here, see now, it would be like jumping. But you don't feel the word jumping. You feel continuity, which means there's a fast process of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching happening. Does it make sense? How fast it is, we don't have to know that. But see, in all these situations, now light reflects to your eyes and you see a picture. But this picture is not moving. Now again, you see a picture, again and again. And then, of course, there's a way of the mind to put all of this into a story and create this feeling of movement there, feeling of past, present and future. So we'll go into these details as well. These are very interesting, and you will realize the huge ignorance that happens in our mind. But for now, we just need to know. I will represent these 6 processes, right? by this symbol, which just represents vibration or happening or process. And this is what the Buddha called as a citta. Citta means it's the elementary unit of consciousness. So what you and me, what we really are, is just a fast process of cittas arising and passing away. I mean, some of you might have heard these things. This is something, if you study the Abhidhamma, you can learn a lot of these things. And I also did that for a while. I also studied the Abhidhamma to the extent that I was able to access. And I did that before I understood the Dhamma. When I started to understand the Dhamma, I never did it anymore. Funnily enough. I was going after the knowledge because things were not clear to me, but when it was clear to me, I didn't have any interest to study this anymore. Because you can study the Abhidhamma all you like, you cannot become enlightened by reading the Abhidhamma itself. Because enlightenment happens, as the Buddha said, Sotapanna happens when you find a Kalyana Mitra. Kalyana Mitra means somebody who has gotten this message from the Buddha or from one of the disciples. So it's only possible by hearing, not by reading, even the Abhidhamma. And the thing is, because we are blind, naturally, to the truth, because of avidya, which means everything to us is one, is a thing, is an entity. We can study the Abhidhamma also, and we can learn lots of knowledge about different things, special things. So Rupa is special, Vedana is special, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana, all these are special. So that means as much as we understand, when you look at it through the lens of ignorance, everything becomes blurred. And since we don't know that we are ignorant, or we don't know what actually happens within the mind itself, we look at the world thinking that that's how the world is. Right? So that means, simply spoken, there's nothing wrong with studying the Abhidhamma, but it's just without the key, it's not going to be of much use. But with the key, you can study it; it will make sense. So I was reading a lot about the process of mind and all these things, and I thought, and it was really interesting to me, but what it really means I understood it only much later, when I came to the monastery and when I was practicing Anicca. And practicing means, most of all, not just reading and gathering knowledge, it's also much more important towards doing merits, creating a meritorious environment, softening your mind, the way you behave towards other people, and all these things are also so crucial, otherwise it's not going to have much effect. See, I mean, there might be scholars in this world who know a lot of physics, and then physicists also know everything is a process, but still they go home, and when they meet their wife, then they can't look at each other's face because last night there was a fight. So see, they have the same problem like we all have, because one thing is knowledge, another thing is wisdom. So however, we can understand now there's a process of the mind. The mind doesn't simply arise and pass away. It doesn't do that just because it's fun. And there's not actually anything called a mind who does anything. See, this sound is merely the effect of the causes coming together. So it's not like it should happen now because that's what somebody said. So it is the response, or the result of the coming together of two causes. In this case, these two causes, like this. So then you will also understand. We'll go into this direction a little bit later, but now you can also understand. See, what can the sound really decide to do? See, can the sound decide not to come if it doesn't want to? See, when you take the pen and you really hit hard on this saucer, can the sound decide, no, I don't want to be loud now, I want to be quiet, I don't want to come, I will come a bit later? It has no freedom whatsoever, isn't it? It can't decide anything. Can the sound do something? Is there someone who does the sound? Is the sound something that can decide where to move and not to move? There's nothing like that, right? It's like the shadow also. I mean, the shadow is also like that. When we're talking about a shadow, how do you create a shadow? When light falls onto an object and there's a ground, a shadow will manifest. So when you move, can the shadow decide to say, okay, I'll stay, I'll come later, see you in 1 hour? No. So the shadow has no control whatsoever. It's just the effect. So see, mind is also like that, even thought's like that. So thought is just the coming together of these causes, nothing more. So then, how can we talk about a thinker? How is it that you and me feel that I am thinking? I am the one who is thinking this thought. Can there be someone who does the thought? I asked this question to you last week as well. Someone who does the thought? It makes no sense. These things happen because of the second process in our mind. They create this kind of illusions. We will understand this also more and more in detail. But I don't want to go to that extent yet. I just want to explain you a simple way how to meditate based on pleasure or the right understanding about happiness. But in the framework of the mind process. So we have talked about, in the past we have talked about pleasure, and I have tried to explain you what pleasure is, but now we can understand how it works in the context of seeing it with the mind, in the mind process. Okay, now I think we have covered this, and the Buddha explained about Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana. Now what you need to know for that, for now, I have talked about this before, not much, but some bit. In English, we should better say it's the 5 functions of the mind. 5 function means these are the steps in a process which happen to create this experience of our life. So these are steps of a process. So in English, I'll just write down the English translations. First thing is the receiving of the stimulus, which we call rupa. So there are many usages of the word rupa in many contexts. We will also learn this later more and more. But in the context of the mind, when we talk about the rupa in the mind, one of the ways to understand this is the receiving of a stimulus. Sometimes we also refer to the stimulus that's created in the mind as a rupa. Okay, but for now let's just understand, okay, we understand this is something like this, coming together of causes, so it's receiving, we call rupa. Vedana is notification. So notification means like when on your phone, when you get a message, there's this sound that happens when you I don't know, the notification, you got a message, or when you got a SMS or something, then this sound is called Vedana. So it's when the arrival of the stimulus happened, the first thing that happens after the arrival is some sort of a notification that it has arisen, that it has arrived, right? The message has arrived. That's a notification. So that's called Vedana. write on the English words. So notification or registration. Sanya, so the object comes to the mind, or to the mind base, where the mind arises, and is received first. Then it is registered that it has arrived, it has arrived. And the next step is recognizing what it is. So recognizing what it is could be understood as, now this is what sanya is, simply using the memory to recognize. So recognize means, it has this part re, right? So re means what's comparing it to something which has already been seen, giving it a name, right? It is really not so important to know all the details about these 5 in that respect, but to have an idea is good. Sankhara, I will just go for now to explain you. It means response. So it's sometimes people say it's the knowledge of what you can do with the object, so that has also something to do with sankhara, but in one way you can just say it's the response to that recognition. Here also it's really important to understand the response is not something, there's no response there, it's just a response, right? We have talked about it, there's no one who does the sankhara. This is actually when sankhara becomes defiled. So sankhara in itself is just a response. There's no one who responds. It's just a response, like, right? Response happens. But in a defiled mind, we think there is a responder. There's an owner of that sankhara. So that part, that is ignorance. Ignorance creates this idea. There's an owner of sankhara. There's someone who does the sankhara. And there's someone who feels the Vedana, there's someone who does the sanya, which means someone who does the recognition. But last week we talked about this as well. When I talk to you and you listen to me, what are you doing to understand my words? And can you not do them? Can you not understand what I say? You can't. Because it's driven by cause and effect. But the feeling of someone is there who can listen, see, hear, someone who's doing all these things, that feeling is there, but that is not because there is actually someone, that is because there's an illusion created in the second process. Right? So the feeling is there, there's someone who owns this sankhara. So in ignorant mind, there's a sankhara and then there's this feeling of this twist, it's getting like twisted. It's like, this is what sankhara does, and now this is what sankhara is, and then what ignorance does is it's making it like this. So ignorance like twists the sankhara and makes it seem like it's something else. So we think, yeah, sankhara, so the first thing if I say sankhara, response, so what's the first thing coming into your mind? There's someone who does that. There's an owner that this response belongs to. The response of someone to something. That's how we start to think immediately. Because why? Ignorance. Because we don't actually realize what really happens, which we are now trying to unravel. Okay, now response is a response. It's also just an effect, like anything in this world. So there's nothing active in this world. Everything is passive. Anything and everywhere, everything is a passive process. And vijnana is simply the sum of all these things, the amalgamation of these things called minding or perception. So what we experience is actually always the sum of these things. We can't perceive anything beyond that. We perceive the sum of these things, a perception, and not even actually one of these vijnanas. We also experience vijnana khanda, which means even a lot of aggregations of these. But these are not important. These are just to have an idea. Now, for us, what we need to understand, when the Buddha explained Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana is Anicca, so that means now we come to, so there can be many ways to understand this. For today, I will explain, we need to understand. See, we have this intuitive idea that this is how I will explain it. The outside stimulus can carry happiness or sadness, suffering or pleasure within to us. We feel like that. So this is something this is how we think the mind works. I'll give this example. There's a person who in his life, let's say something bad happens to this person. Now I'm already speaking with ignorance. Something bad happens to this person. What happens? So I'm conventionally bad, okay? Conventionally bad. Actually, there's nothing called bad. Something bad happens. What happened? He or she gets abused. He or she gets abused. So what is an abuse? We'll just limit it to the fact that it could be simply verbal or physical. Physical can mean there's someone who touches you somewhere on your, let's say, hand, who you don't like him to do that, at least not in that moment, right? Make sense? So this has happened to people. So there was a touch, or there was words. So there was this, or there was this, isn't it? Sound or object. Object means, let me correct this, touch. Yeah, it makes it easier. So, in our ignorant idea, it says, there was this thing that this person said, or there was this touch that happened. I'll stay with this example of the touch. So there was this touch on the hand that happened. That touch was very, very negative, which means the suffering that we experience. See, when that happened to this person, it was a horrifying experience. So where did that horrifyingness feeling come from? From what happened to her or him. Therefore, this is what we think it was. There was an experience, there was a touch which happened, and this very negative. And when that came to the mind, suffering happened in the mind. So we suffered because of the touch which brought the suffering to us. Isn't that the way a person who experiences such a situation feels, and after it has finished, we have this thing called traumas. People have a trauma. So that means sometimes for the rest of their lives, they can never become that happy anymore as that situation which happened. See, because if this logic is true, then the mind comes to a conclusion. For example, if the touch was what made me suffer, then what should I definitely do so that I can be happy? Because the mind always looks for happiness, which is its intuitive drive, which is nothing wrong. That's why you're here today. So we have to find the right way to find happiness. But if we don't know, if we are in this ignorance, what will happen is the mind will think, now if this was so bad, still now I'm suffering from this. Still now I have to live with this pain that has happened from this experience. What should I definitely try and do? Be very careful that this is not happening again, right? So that means it will shape this person's thinking into a way where this person will definitely try to avoid such situations from happening again. So there is going to be a huge amount of fear for this to happen again. Fear means vexation, constant stress, so there's these things called trust issues. Then suddenly, whenever we see people, we feel like, okay, we can't trust anyone, because there's always this fear, if this happens, that would be the worst thing. So that means then such a person is unable to trust maybe the whole world, no one anymore, because of this fear that there are such things called touches which can make me suffer a lot, right? And therefore, it's trying to avoid these things, and this having to avoid in itself is a huge amount of burden that this person carries around for the whole life. Even if nothing ever happens, that in itself is a huge burden. And the fact is that if it happens again, actually it's going to be much worse than the first time. Because the more you try to avoid something, the more when it happens, it's going to make you suffer. Right? Which also proves to us, if the amount of suffering we experience when we try to avoid something is higher than if we don't try to avoid it, does that not tell us that it can't be from the thing that we suffer? Because if it's the thing that makes us suffer, what does it matter whether we try to avoid it or not? But if our trying to avoid it makes us suffer it more, then does it not mean that our trying to avoid it has an influence on the suffering itself? Because this is what the reality really is. Suffering has nothing to do with this. Nothing like this has ever happened. And there's no such a thing called a touch which has this. Please don't get me wrong, touch can hurt. Touch can hurt physically. I'm not talking about this part. The physical pain is something real, so that's real. They would have called it as dukkha vedana. But what he didn't say was that there's such a thing called a dukkha vedana which brings mental pain. There's no such thing called sight, sound, smell, taste, touch which brings mental pain. How can that be? How can something bring mental pain? Mental pain is not a thing. It's a process that happens. How can mental pain be in a thing which has nothing to do with mental? See, this is an object. Has this to do anything with the mind? It's just matter. How can this have mental pain? How can this have mental pain? Mental pain happens, but it can't be something stored in an object. Happiness is a feeling where? In the mind. So how can it be stored in somewhere? But don't you feel strongly that happiness can be stored in objects? I mean, what have you tried to do in your lives, and me as well? What are the pictures? Why did you put pictures into your living room? Just because of fun of putting pictures somewhere. You have to carry them, you have to buy them, you have to pay money to get them. And what are the pictures you put into your living room? these were the things which, when you look at them, make you happy. The holiday you have done, or a nice scenery in some kind of, maybe, I don't know, in Italy, some kind of landscape. It doesn't matter, don't know where, whatever. So what we have done is we try to accumulate objects which have happiness in them. So our room is just a desperate attempt of collecting objects that we feel there's happiness in them. So when we look in our room, we see if I sum up all the happiness, I come to 1,000. So we collected these objects for happiness, but the Buddha looks at it and says, yeah, you just collected objects, nothing more. And another person comes to the different conclusion, right? He takes a paper, okay, this object, so this book about traveling, I don't know, minus 50. And you say, no, it's plus 300. See, but you're talking about this illusion here. This illusion of minus in touch. So this is what ignorance makes us feel. So now we have to talk about the second process. See, now you have to understand that these happen, but the Buddha, when he explained anicca, dukkha and anatta, what he means is that happiness and suffering, as an example, these are effects or processes. So they never come, rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara, vijnana, these never bring happiness or suffering. So the world out there never brings happiness or suffering to rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara, vijnana. So rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara, vijnana, which means simply, we should just leave it for that, is sight, sound, smell, taste and touch, for the purpose of our discussions. These are just experiences, not good, not bad. Okay, physical pain is real, physical comfort is real, but apart from that, nothing like that. So, which means that is what the world really is. In this context, so sometimes I explain anicca as causes come together, but in this way we can also see when we feel the world, we feel it nicca, sukha and atta. So nicca means pleasurable, sukha means joyful, and atta means essenseful. So now I'm talking about this essence, which is this good or bad, right? So the world has so many good and bad things. Essenseful, essence means also special. So essence has also many meanings, but this is really important to understand. But here we have to understand the outside experiences. So a touch is merely a touch. See, I gave you this example the other day. If you are upset with your husband or your friend, but he doesn't know that, and because you think he did something which he maybe never did. So you saw that someone has destroyed the flower vase in your apartment or in your house, and actually it was the wind because you left the window open. I don't know. But you think it was him or her. So now when he comes home, and let's say he is in a good mood, so he tries to hug you or he just says hello to you, you don't like to hear that. You don't like to experience this touch, because in your mind at that moment you don't want to experience that, because he's a person who did something to you. So in your mind there's in the mind there's an expectation of, I don't want this right now. So because of this wanting, he has done something, so I don't want to talk with him right now. So in this moment, there's a preference in the mind not to associate this person. And when, however, the association happens, because when the causes come together, it happens, discomfort is created like this. Like, see, discomfort and comfort is basically nothing else than when this is the world and this is the upadana process, avidya paccaya sankhara vijnana namarupa salayatana phassa vedana, I don't know, maybe I forgot something, Then we come Tanha and Upadana. So Upadana is this, the world I like to have. And my husband, my wife, she did that. At that moment, I don't want to talk to her. So this is the formed expectation the mind has holding on to in this moment. So it can change very quickly, but in this moment, this is the preference. But now, this is the experience comes like this. So the experience can come in many ways. Sometimes it's like this, sometimes like this. So it has many shapes. But because you have to press this shape through a form, and this is this unflexible mindset. We can't be water, which means now we are holding on to this idea, or not we, but there's this wanting. I don't want to talk to her. I don't want to associate her or him. Therefore, this happens, right? Upadana plus Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana. This happens, and when these two happen like this, conflict. So conflict is the effect of these two coming together. That means suffering, negativity is the effect of the comparison of these two things. This is what happens in the second process. So, I'll write it down. So I'll explain it in the words I have at the moment. So there's a model the mind holds on to of the thing it believes brings so much happiness, which it wants to experience. So there's a kind of a wanting for that. So the things which are good, I want to experience them. And then there are so many things which are bad, and then there's a corresponding wanting for that as well, which is not to experience them, right? So this is formed from this happens in the second process. Now the ignorance runs like this. See, these are the models this mind has created. So for example, this girl who has been abused, or this woman, or this man who has been abused, doesn't matter. When this touch happened, suffering happened, mental suffering happened in that mind. But what was the conclusion of that mind? It happened because of the touch. Because the mental suffering in that moment was misinterpreted. So what happened was touch happened and mental suffering happened. This was real. But when we don't understand mental suffering correctly, when we don't understand it comes out of the comparison, we think it came from here. When we think it came from here, now we don't want to experience this. So this is like a feedback loop that I'm trying to explain. It's this ignorance. Or actually this is not ignorance, it's called a defilement process. So this is the normal chitta and this is the defilement process. The defilement process works like this. Intuitively, we all feel, and if I ask you this, you will hand on heart, if you listen to your voice that tells you do feel that happiness and suffering are there in the events, in the outside world. So you feel Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana, or sight, sound, smell, taste and touch, bring me all these things. So that's why you have preferences. Otherwise you shouldn't have any preference. So welcome, you should be an arahant otherwise. But preferences are there based on this idea, right? Which means there is a kind of a wrong knowledge in your mind, or in our mind, in the mind generally, that these happiness and suffering do come from the event itself. It's not something that comes from comparison. No, this is something new I told you today, and you come to this conclusion by contemplating. But first of all, you think like this. So when I had my first girlfriend and she broke up with me, I thought it's because she broke up with me I'm sad. So I thought when she said, I'm sorry, but I want to move on. So when these words hit my face, so they hit me with a lot of pain. But actually they hit me without any pain. There was nothing in there. See, I wanted to be with her, or not actually I wanting was there. There was a thought that this is something good. It has given me a lot of happiness, this relationship. But what has really happened was, it has never given me anything. All that happened was, the vexation in the mind was released. So I thought there was happiness, I wanted it, and when I got it, release of happiness, release of suffering. That's it, nothing happened. There was nothing pleasurable I ever experienced. You also, you have never experienced anything pleasurable, because there's no such a thing. Suvishesha is a complete illusion, because we don't understand that it's always the comparison which releases a pressure. This is what you have to understand. Then you have no reason to expect anything. So now, ignorance is, pleasure and suffering is in the object. So if pleasure and suffering are things which are in the objects, then naturally what we want is to be happy in a relationship, as an example, and what we don't want is for that person to break up with us, because we think, oh, that's not good. That would make me sad. Or we don't want many things in our lives to happen. So from this idea that such is the world, the mind develops preferences. Preferences are built, and in every thought which arises, before the mind knows what is it going to experience now. See, it's like when somebody rings the door and gives you a package. Before you actually know what's in the package, we already have a hope. Hopefully it is something good. So we are already suffering before we know what it is. We suffer from curiosity, we suffer from the hope for it to be good. Isn't this suffering? Because it's an expectation. Do you want to wait? See, if you have to wait for something and don't know what it is, I mean, do you want to live like this for the rest of your life? No, because this is torture. You torture yourself because you're waiting for the video, right? Unless you're an arahant, you have a feeling that when you're looking at the video, there was going to be some sort of pleasure that you're going to experience. Therefore, there's a wanting. Because when you're watching this video, watch your mind, you will feel release. But think about what this release really means. Does it come from the video or not? Because it's because you believe that there is something in the video. Therefore, there's a wanting. Not you believe, the mind believes. Therefore, there's a wanting. Therefore, now, actually, that actually is already the upadana model. I don't have to put it twice. So this is the upadana in a sense. And when this upadana happens, it has a lot of, this wanting leads to strong sense of vexation, as you know when you observe your mind right now. When you want to experience, when you're hopeful, when you're anxious to experience something that was promised to you as being special, you feel this sense of tension within you. And then you hope for this pleasure that you think is out there. When the experience comes, what happens is what you're hoping for and what happens agrees. If it agrees. Now, if it agrees, it will be a contact like that. And from that contact, so the Buddha called this as sampassa, I think. Sampassa means it's not just a contact, it's contact with defilements. So when this happens, what you want and what comes is in agreement, then this vexation which you experience in this moment is released. So all the pressure in your mind all the pressure in the mind reduces. And that's the feeling of pleasure that you experience, that the mind experiences. Nothing in the video, nothing which came, but you feel this sense of release or enjoyment, which is nothing more than the release of the pressure from this contact, the vexation which is there right now. Therefore, when this experience happens, and if it's something that if the thing that you liked has happened, the pressure will release. But imagine you want something and the opposite happens. So you have this preference, only these people should touch me at the hand, these people should not. This is what ignorance feels. These, yes, and not all the time, only this time, these people, and so on, like so on, this our mind thinks like that. Then if it happens otherwise, the world doesn't know you are expecting this, now it sends you something else in the wrong moment, so your husband comes but you're angry on him, suddenly there's this kind of a contact, or like this. Then out of this contact is born suffering, disappointment. And this feeling is misinterpreted as coming from the experience. Therefore, we go back to this more stronger belief that this one I should avoid and this one I should associate. And this is how it reinforces each other with circle by circle. Every time as we live, it gets reinforced, right? Because we always try to avoid something which we think makes us suffer, so that when it happens, that much more it makes us suffer, so then we think, even more reason to avoid it. So you try to avoid it harder. When it happens, makes you suffer again, even harder, so you try to avoid it even more. And then the more you try to avoid these, the more you want to associate the others. And when you associate them, all the pressure, all the wanting, all the stress that you had goes away, which convinces you even more of the fact that, no, this is really good. And now you're stuck. And that's what we have come to. Because we always misinterpret the nature of suffering and happiness being an effect of this comparison. Nothing more. So vexation leads to pleasure and suffering. And when we don't realize the real nature of this being actually created by this process itself, we think this came from the object, and it reinforces our idea that this should be avoided, this should be experienced. The wrong interpretation reinforces the circle over and over again. So this process happens in every citta. But what you can do, and this is what we call meditation, which we unfortunately we'll see how to manage this. See, all that we have to do is we have to become aware of what really happens. So it can happen at any stage of this process. I mean, actually, ignorance we can't really feel, but vexation, pleasure, suffering, these are things we can experience, and when we interpret them correctly, we can come out of this loop. When we experience pleasure and suffering, if we know that it's merely because of the contact, then we become aware of this process alone. Because you don't know that this process is running until now I told you, until somebody tells you. You don't know because, that's what ignorance is. Not knowing that ignorance is there is what we call ignorance. So this process doesn't know about this process being there. So because you don't know that happiness comes out of a comparison or suffering comes out of a comparison, actually when I say it comes out of a comparison, I am also lying to you in a bit. See, it's not, you can never create happiness or suffering out of this contact. When the contact happens, there's a feeling of suffering. What if this event stops? Let's say there's someone who touches you and you don't like that. So there's a wanting and there's a touch. So when the touch stops, so what happens with the clap? What happened to the clap or the touch, this feeling? It stops because it's not created. So the day after something horrible happened to you, see, where's all that bad feeling from the day before? Because this was a process. Anything bad that ever happened to you, any bad feeling was a process, which means there it happened as the result of event and the wanting. But today, here, you are sitting with me right now. So think about all the things which were bad in your lives and the suffering you experienced because of that. Let's say your heartbreak from the past or whatever. I can take this as an example. Don't you feel that somehow this pain is still with you? Yeah, we feel like that. But the Buddha explained it's arising and passing away. It can't be with you. It was there in that moment, but right now all that's real for you is the sight, seeing me, or seeing this seeing experience, the hearing experience, tasting, smelling, touching experience. So, see, 10 minutes ago, where was the pain of your past event? Where was it? Did you feel it? No. But when I said, think about that thing, in that moment, this happened. Thought, mind, this makes no sense. Thought plus mind equals thought. I should write it as idea maybe. Or memory, let's just say memory. See, when I said, think about the thing that happened to you, the bad thing. See, before I said this to you, you didn't feel any suffering. And the suffering wasn't somewhere in your body or in your soul stored up and waiting to come out and jump at you and haunt you again. This is an illusion, which comes to realize how this view of soul comes into being because of the view of entities. Actually, what happened was this. I said, think about the thing that happened to you. Now, what happened is an environment is created in your mind where a memory comes in to create that thought of the thing that happened to you. So think about that heartbreak you had. So now, suddenly a memory comes. And because of the misinterpretation of the memory in this moment itself, you feel a pain, or a pain happens. Sometimes maybe you had experiences which made you suffer, but once you started, let's say there was a person who cheated you in maybe money. He cheated you in terms of money. So you were really angry on him. Whenever you thought about him, you were so angry. But then, I don't know, maybe something bad happened to him. Maybe, I don't know, he was put into prison. So whenever you thought about him before, he cheated you, so you get really upset. Now that you know he's in prison, whenever the thought comes, you feel happy. Because it's based on what happens here. So what I want to say is that when I say, think about the bad thing that happened, in this moment a chitta arises, and a comparison happens based on what you believe was good or bad and what you believe brings happiness and not. And in this moment, again, suffering was created. This is a complete new of suffering because of this process. But that's not how you and me feel. We feel, yeah, this event was really bad. Still I have the pain with me. But see, trauma, the way that science talks about, like I was reading this book about psychology the other day, they talk about trauma being something which happens, which is afflicted to you. Afflicted means something happens to you, and as a result of that, you are left with something which you have to live with. not just left with something. There's a pain created with you that you have to live with, mental pain. This is an illusion created. It's not true. It's not, because you can't create a clap, right? Can you create a clap? The moment the causes are no longer together, what has been created? What can causes create when they come together? Nothing. You can't create anything. For a clap to happen, how can you ever stop clapping and have the clap remaining? See, if I want a clap, I need to keep the causes together. The moment I stop it, where's the clap? How long do I have to clap for the clap to be there and I can pack my hands and walk away and go home? It is not possible. So that means, no matter how much bad things happen in your life, see, there's a chitta which feels the suffering, right? But when that chitta ceases, when that chitta passes away, all of the suffering that was there ceases alongside. Nothing remains. It's not like this chitta has a suffering, now it passes away, but it leaves the suffering for the next chitta to experience that again. Nothing like that. That's why, now I'm talking about mental suffering, even physical suffering. Even physical suffering can't remain. When the chitta passes away, the physical suffering goes away with it. If anything, you can experience a new instance of physical pain the next moment, right? So you know that.
What about chemical reactions of your brain?
Yeah, the thing is this. See, the brain constantly chemically reacts, right? So reacting happens. So one reaction leads to one impulse, which leads to one pain. But that pain is being perceived and passes away. Then, for you to experience a new pain, a new chemical reaction must happen in your brain to create a new stimulus and a new reaction and a new instance of pain. But it is something that happens, it's a new stimulus. It's not the same pain that the moment before. That's why what these painkillers really do is, first of all, they don't stop the pain that you experienced, because see, the moment you take this painkiller, all the pain you have experienced the last 1 hour is anyway already gone. You can't stop that. You can only, and even if you take your tablet, what it can only do is it can go somewhere into your brain and it can stop the neurotransmitter somewhere, which results in no arising of a new pain in the future. That's it. It doesn't really it can't really stop the pain you're feeling, and because that thing already passes away anyways. Just now it will pass away. But what it can do is it can stop the creation of a new pain, because these are processes, right? So pain happens only as long as all the causes are there. It's a process that has to be continuously fed. So the brain has to work. I mean, the moment your brain stops working, you know, the pain will also be gone. It's not left somewhere. So there's never anything left. When a chitta passes away, that's it. All the pain, all the happiness which was there within that chitta is gone with it, as if it's never happened. That happiness is not there. But how do we live our lives? See, don't we try to collect happiness? I mean, I don't know. I know that, see, and I told this before, in the Western world, my friends and all of them, if I were to tell them, see, when you die, you have to leave everything behind. You can't take away your possessions. You can't take away whatever you have done. All the playing computer, see, it's impermanent. You can't take it away. That's not working, right? Because why? Because they say, I know I can't play anymore, but see, from doing all of these things, I have been able to absorb happiness, which is, the things will not be there with me anymore, but they have given me a happiness, and that I can take with me, because that is with me now. But the reality is, not even link it a little bit, nothing. Nothing.
What do you take as karma?
Good question. Karma is real, So karma happens as a result of this process as well. See, karma can create an energy which comes back to you. So karma can create, I don't know, when we do a merit, somebody does a merit, he's offering flowers in the temple and says, I would like to be born in this or this place. See, the merit happened, and the energy was released by the mind, and also, so for this process to happen, now you can influence that. By the merit, you can make a certain seeing happen based on the wanting which was there in that mind. So you can connect these things. Vipaka is one of the important parts of making this happen. But the thing is, you can... Vipaka is nothing that can give you happiness. I mean, how shall we say? So we feel there are good vipakas and bad vipakas, right? But actually there's no such a thing in terms of pleasure and suffering in the vipaka. But of course, vipakas can come back to us, and the interpretation happens them as being good or bad. So that is what's real. So, of course, physical pain is something that is real, and it happened because of something bad we have done, or something bad which has happened, or not bad, we can say bad, but there was a bad intention. The intention is what matters. We can never say that the action was bad, it's simply the intention which was there was harmful. So karma happens because of the way how the mind tries to release this vexation, either by releasing it in a good way, which means we should say with a good intention, and bad when it's something with bad intention. So vipaka itself, like even in heaven, I mean the Brahmaloka or any of these, none of these have suffering or happiness within. Yes, what's not going to be there is this dukkha and sukha vedana that we have due to the body. And the thing is now, if you can be fed with the things you want to have all the time, you're never going to experience this feeling of vexation much. See, this is the difference between living in a rich country and living in a poor country. The difference of, we experience a comfort difference. The comfort difference we experience is based on us getting what we want very quickly, which is because of merits. So merits what can they do? They can give us what we want really quickly. But at the end of the day, they have given us something which is at the end of the day essenceless and vexatious and not special in any way other than anything else, because the world is, in the world everything is the same. Everything is neutral. And another way we are going to talk about is as well, see, when you realize that all that, the whole world that you experience is created from a nerve signal, right? Your whole identity is created in this moment based on a nerve signal. The idea that you are a man or a woman in this moment is created from the fact that when you look at your body, you see the shape you see right now, or from a memory. If I ask you, what's your name? See, if I change the input into your nerves, you will tell me another name. And I can make you believe that your name was always, let's say, Peter. So none of you are called Peter, let's assume. even the women among you, I can, if I change simply the input to your mind right now, which means I am affecting the memory you're going to perceive. See, I can feed you with wrong memories, right? I can make you feel like you have lived a life in France, and you have been living there, and your name is Peter, and this is the memories I feed you in this moment, and I'm feeding you with the sense, with the image, what means with the picture of you being a man, by feeding you with these nerve signals. So then all that you have in this moment, see, all that is there is one chitta in this moment. All of the things in the past are not there. So that means if I feed you right now with the memory of having lived in France, if I feed you right now with the feeling that your body looks like a man, you will wholeheartedly believe, and you will give $1 million that you have always been a man and you have been living there in France. And that is who you are. And you feel that this is so true based on what you experience right now. But there's nothing more than that, because this is also part of realizing this arising and passing away process. Like, if we are only a chitta arising in this moment, then how can we take our identity so serious? To really believe that these were all the things that happened to me, and I have been there, and this is the world as it exists out there. I'm really in Colombo right now. It's only a feeling this chitta feels here, but this chitta has... Anyway, what's the past of this chitta? This chitta right now that's listening to me, how old is that? Like, this was a sound, right? This is a new sound. And I can keep doing this for 1 hour. Let's say I do this for 1 hour, or let's say for 10 seconds. Okay, now. And this one? How old is this? 10 seconds long? Is it 10 seconds old? Is this 10 seconds old, or 11 or 12? 13? 14 seconds old? 15 seconds old? No, it's always now. New, 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 new. So you have never experienced anything? That was not new. But how do we feel? Yeah, this sound was there 15 seconds long. Same sound which was there 15 seconds long. So the same sound I'm hearing, same picture I'm seeing from the beginning of the sermon. Total nonsense. Can't be. This picture is created right now. But you and me feel this has been there for 1 hour. It looks the same, it looks similar, it's not the same, it's just similar. Okay.
Salis, what you say is we have lived only in the present.
What that means, people who live in the present without understanding anicca, they will say, right now I'm looking at this, right now I am looking at this screen and seeing this image. In this present moment I'm seeing this image which has been there for 1 hour. That is what present moment awareness is. That is complete ignorance. That is not what I'm talking about. Because when you feel that you are listening to something, then you are aware of the present moment, but you're feeling an illusion. And you feel that, yeah, I'm in this moment, but I have a past. See, this chitta says, this chitta which is talking to you right now, actually it's not a chitta, the chitta is not doing the talking, it's not an active thing, talking is happening, yes, we can say the chitta is arising and passing away. The chitta says, I've been in Germany, this is my past. This chitta was not in Germany. Can't be. There was a chitta in Germany, we can say something like that. But now, the thing is now, see, can you really be sure that the chitta arises in Colombo? Can you even say that? See, if I change your nerves, you will say, I'm in New York. So does the chitta arise in Colombo right now and makes you only feel that you're in New York? Can you really actually in this way, I don't know, if I'm thinking about it, can you really say where it arises? These are too deep for the moment to discuss. But certainly you will, and maybe we explored too much Dhamma today, but the simple fact is, focus on this. But we have to stop now, and otherwise we won't even be able to watch the video. So I'll show you this video. So in this video, in this very, very special video, this is convention, now this is and there's absolute reality and there's convention. So this is just giving you an impression of the Vesak festival in our monastery. I haven't seen the video myself, but these are really nice to look, because when you see people practicing the Dhamma and doing meritorious deeds, that's always a reason to rejoice. That's what comes to my mind. And maybe some of you are interested as well to know what's going on, and so it also maybe can give you more idea about this is not just a monk who came from the forest, but there's what is behind me, like the monastery we are, and of course at the end of the day this monastery is always, we are like counseling sessions, and there's always an opportunity to come and be there or make use of our services if ever you feel that you need them. So that's why we'll just show you this small video. How long is it? 5 minutes. So yeah, that's fine. Okay, one last point to there. Just sometimes people might think there's no way to escape from this, but I told it to you in words. By interpreting in this in the right way, this is what we have discussed today in nearly 2 hours, all of the things, using that, when we come to the right awareness, then this whole process of suffering stops. Understanding is the first step, practicing is the second step. So we're going to continue talking about these two processes in the next few weeks as well, and this is what the Dhamma is actually all about, and understanding what anicca, dukkha, anatta means. From there you know what reality is, then you know what your mind fabricates, and then you can know the reality properly, and then the suffering stops. There's nothing more that you have to do, just to come to the awareness. For that, of course, the reason why you can't be here, why we can discuss the Dhamma, and actually this is what our teacher also tells to the devotees in our monastery. I always love to give sermons, especially to audiences like these, because first of all, I can earn merits, right? One way. There's not that I'm doing it just for myself, not in this way, but when you wholeheartedly do for others, that it serves you the most as well. But it's an opportunity for me to earn merits as well. Of course, secondly, by teaching, I learn myself. That's also great. The best way to learn is by teaching. And thirdly, because when we all come together and we have all done a lot of merits, then this is usually when we can learn the greatest things. So I always feel, for example, today I feel it's because of the merits you have done, we all coming together, that we can practice the path together, and we can make a step towards Nibbana, and we make a step towards freeing our mind from suffering. So that means we all have to continue doing merit as much as we can, and that will pave the path for the future. And even watching these videos and rejoicing in the goodness which you can see is also a very good way to earn merit. So for me, I mean, when I come to the Dhamma hall and these the devotees come in, we all feel this this special feeling, and even these drums, and I don't know why, but see, whenever I hear these drums playing in the Dhamma hall, I can realize the win, that the victory of the Buddha against the Mara, against the samsara, which is like you can't express in words the effort that went into doing this, and the love he had for us, because otherwise there was no chance for us to free us from the samsara, giving all the huge these eons of striving he had to do to uncover this truth that we are beginning to explore, and that we still have in today's time to use to come out of this deep suffering of samsara. So it's like a victory in the middle of the darkness. That's how I feel this. It's not music really. It's the sound, and so yeah. Okay. Let's share our merits for today. Let us take a moment to transfer all the merits we have acquired today by making offerings to the infinite virtues of the Noble Triple Gem, by inviting the Swami Nahansi to deliver the sermon, offering flowers, oil lamps, incense sticks, betel leaves, and by listening to the sermon, contemplating on the sermon, practicing the path, and various offerings that we have done. First and foremost, let us transfer these merits to all the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, upasakas, upasikas, who since time immemorial have protected and preserved the sublime teachings of the Buddha and have passed it down to the generations of the noble lineage in the form of the Tripitaka, which is thankfully available to us today to study, comprehend, and understand the Dhamma. Let's also transfer these merits to all members of the Mahasangha present throughout the world, including the chief prelates of all of the chapters, who have dedicated their lives towards the noble path and have committed themselves towards the betterment of all sentient beings. Let us not forget that among them are the monks and nuns resident in your local temples and nunneries, who've always been by your side through thick and thin, come rain or shine. Let's also transfer these merits to Guru Swami Nahansi, as well as all the monks resident at the monastery, as well as the Anagarika attached to the monastery. Let's also transfer these merits and express our gratitude to all those who make great efforts to disseminate the teachings of the Buddha, be that by transliterating these sermons, sharing them out with others, or inviting others to join them. If any of them have been born in the woeful plane, may they redeem themselves and be born in the blissful plane. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to our devotees, friends of the monastery, who for the sake of merits continue to sustain the Mahasangha by providing the four requisites, sharing their know-how, and extending their well wishes. Let's also transfer these merits to each and everyone who has made these sermons and this program possible, all the administrations and organizational staff, and everyone, each and everyone who has contributed even by a mere thought. May through these merits they be healed of all the physical and mental ailments, and may they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to our mothers, fathers, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews and nieces, our elders, friends and acquaintances, and employers and employees, and to all those who've helped us and supported us and assisted us. And may the power of these and also let us transfer our merits to our teachers. May the power of these merits they be healed of any physical and mental ailments and overcome any obstacles to their spiritual progress. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to the Devas and Brahmas, spirits and demons, primarily the Sakradeva, as well as all the numerous gods and deities, who are committed to protect and fulfill the Sambuddha Sasana. Let's also transfer these merits to our guardian deities, who keep a watchful eye over us and keep us out of harm's way. May through the power of these merits they prosper in divine power and wisdom. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also transfer these merits to our ancestors, to all those who have predeceased us, to all those who have been family and friends to us in this infinite long journey of samsara. Let's also transfer these merits to all members of the armed forces as well as the police forces who have sacrificed their lives to protect the peace and harmony of our nation. May all those who lost their lives in the war, be they friend or foe, rejoice in the merits we've acquired today. Let's also transfer these merits to all those who lost their lives in natural calamities such as tsunamis, earthquakes, landslides and pandemics, reminding ourselves that among them will be those who have been family and friends to us in this infinitely long journey of samsara. May throughout these merits, if any of them have been born in a woeful plane, they redeem themselves and be born in a blissful plane. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Finally, let us all resolve that may, through power and blessings of all the merits we have acquired throughout the day, we be able to witness the advent of many hundreds of thousands of Arahants on this blessed land. And finally, let us all resolve that may, through power of all the merits we have acquired today, you and I and everyone who has helped to make this program a success become an Arahat Enhanse and Arahat Mehin Enhanse in this very life itself and in the era of the Gautama Supreme Buddha itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now the Mahasangha will transfer the blessings to you. Raga ginin midatva, dvesha ginin midatva, moha ginin midatva, nibbana parama sukhayin, sukhita taravatva, Nibbana parama sukhayin, sukhita taravatva, mamada siyalo loka, siyalo satvayo, Nibbana parama sukhayin, sukhita taravatva, Nibbana parama sukhayin, sukhita taravatva, Nibbana parama sukhayin, sukhita taravatva, raga gini niveva, desha gini niveva, moha gini niveva, nivan sapalabheva, nivan sapalabheva, nivan sapalabheva. Tunaruangi suisi ananda mahaguna belen, sialu loka silu satyo, Nibbana Paramasukhin Sukhitaravetva. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.